Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tiger's Den. You'll notice a brand new mic sitting in front of me. I'm Chris. This is the Tiger's Den. Let's talk about Borderlands 3 because I think I'm finally ready to review this dang thing. So, Borderlands 3 has been out now for like 2.5 weeks. Let's go with 2.5 weeks, alright? So for 2.5 weeks, Borderlands has been out, and let's say it was a rocky launch. The Road 2 launch was also rocky. We're going to skip past that, though, because I believe I've made it pretty clear in my videos that I adore the Borderlands series. I don't care at all about Randy Pitchford or 2K or the way they bungle all their other games. None of that affects my love for Battleborn, the Borderlands series, at all. So we're going to dive into just Borderlands, and that is my pledge for this review. So talking about Borderlands 3, I'm going to go through a couple of pillars here, and I think I'm going to hit all the big notes and all the big marks. Now, yeah, everyone's reviewed the game by now. However, I think there are some things that are glossed over that I don't want to. So the first thing I want to talk about is Borderlands graphics. Borderlands has never been a real graphic intense game on any platform, and yet for the PS4 Pro, I had heard a ton of issues with people playing the game. Now, I hadn't faced any of those issues. I want to make that point right now. I did my first impressions. That still stands. I've been playing the game couch co-op, and I've been playing a couple of characters solo. That still stands. I've not had any issues with the game, and I appreciate everyone else's problems, but that's not going to affect my look at the game. So, Borderlands 3, in terms of graphics, though, somehow did, in fact, get better. Borderlands 3 maintains that kind of cel-shaded style that you love, that you're used to, and that Borderlands is damn well famous for, and somehow it's cleaner, it's crisper, and it feels better. You know, some of the textures and the layers seemed muddy in previous Borderlands. That's not the case anymore. Borderlands 3 has probably the cleanest, most crisp textures of all 3 entries in the series. And I know, as it should, it's 2019, the first Borderlands came out like a decade ago, over a decade ago. So I understand that, I appreciate that, but I do want to make note that yes, the graphics are better here. So when people say stuff like, oh, Borderlands 2, new DLC, that's just disingenuous. And if we're going to talk about the graphics for Borderlands 3, then we need to talk about the updated, kind of smoothed out gameplay. What I mean by that is, first off, I mean the guns. You know, the guns all feel like they have a real weight to them. They're less floaty than they were in previous entries in terms of your aiming, the kickback, the noises. All of those things are improved here, and I think in a way that's so noticeable. To say stuff like, oh, it's the same as the previous entries, again, it's disingenuous at best. It's so far improved here, it's almost the first thing I noticed. At the beginning of the game, you know, minor spoilers are going to happen here, but at the beginning of the game, Claptrap's going to get you a pistol. Okay? You're going to get a pistol, and that pistol is going to feel better. Despite being a garbage pistol, it's going to feel better to fire than at least 80 to 90% of the other pistols throughout the Borderlands series. So take that for what you will. On top of that, Borderlands has added a verticality to the way that they do combat, because you can now jump and kind of pull yourself or vault yourself up onto the next level. So jumping and verticality is now a thing in Borderlands where it wasn't before. You know, where it was before, it was like, yeah, you could jump, but why? You know, you could jump over small barricades, but you couldn't jump upstairs, you couldn't jump up ledges. Here you can. And yeah, I know they had some of the anti-grav stuff in the pre-sequel, but who likes the pre-sequel? And on top of all of that, you know, things like the weapon switching and the running and the sliding, all of that stuff feels really natural here. The jumping and slamming the ground with the melee ability feels great as well. None of these, though, and I want to point this out because I've seen 3 notable reviewers do this, none of these are massive changes that need to be like the spotlight of your review. And that's kind of wonking me out, right? It's like, all of these things are almost, and I don't want to sound privileged, I don't want to sound like I'm taking anything for granted in what these developers do, because what they make is something special. But these are the kind of improvements that, yes, after like 5 years, I expect them in the 3rd entry of your game. Like, these are basic things. And I'll say the UI of this game has not improved. If anything, the map system has gotten worse. They tried, swing and a miss. Okay? Swing and a miss. I appreciate the effort. 3D maps are awesome, but I feel like the old maps were probably easier to navigate. I want to say again, Borderlands is not a game without menus. For being a shooter game that's meant to emphasize pace and play, this is definitely a game where you're gonna be looking in talent trees. I want to say that this series is almost one of the reasons the Diablo 3 team said, yeah, we're done with talent trees, because there are a lot of people that I talk to, I know anecdotally, but there are a lot of people that I talk to that are turned off by having to dig into menus and stat crunch to try to optimize their character. They just want to run and gun, and they don't feel like they're doing the game right if they don't do that. So I don't know. The menus are fine, they're serviceable, but they're the same that they were when I picked up Borderlands 1 all those years ago. And I guess, the running and sliding thing is like a nice, yay. I kind of expected something like that to evolve out of the menu system by now. And maybe that's me taking for granted the amount of work that developers put into these games, but it seems like you knew what you had with Borderlands, and if you wanted to make Borderlands 3 Borderlands just way better, one of the things you would have cleaned up is the menus. That's just my thoughts. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, though, is the story of Borderlands 3. And while I'll say that expectations are lofty after a character like Handsome Jack, and the pre-sequel kind of did a really good job telling that story, I want to throw some shade at Handsome Jack fanboys, and I want to say that the best writing in the Borderlands series is actually the Telltale Tales of the Borderlands series. I thought that those games had probably the best writing of any Borderlands. They kept the humor while not making it... I don't want to use the word irrelevant, but I feel like it's semi out of place in Borderlands 3, whereas it felt fresh, it felt great, but it felt Borderlands-y in the Telltale Tales of the Borderlands. So, I want to say that this kind of humor is easy to do, even in 2019, if you had just hired the writers from the Telltale series to punch up the jokes and the writing of this series, because this entry did feel like it was joke. Now, I mean, I felt with these Vault Hunters the same level of attachment that I felt to all the other Vault Hunters, which is 0. My attachment is based on the skill tree. It has never been based on the story because, as we've seen from the OG 4 Vault Hunters, they're really not cool until you can't play them, right? So yeah, I've never felt that kind of connection, and calling us Vault Hunters now is just, it's weird. It meant something different in the first Borderlands, you know it did. You know, it meant something different, it felt like something different than it was even in Borderlands 2, and thus Borderlands 3. So, yeah, we could probably look at revamping that. Now, they've said that they're not going to put out any more Vault Hunters, that we're stuck with the 4 that we have. And I'll say out of those 4, I find 2, maybe 3 interesting. I might be the one person that finds Flack to be boring as all get out. And it's because he's a robot using monsters. I would have preferred an actual Beastmaster using maybe animals from exotic planets that we're traveling to, or haven't been to yet. That would be a neat a neat teaser for future Borderlands entries to have, you know, some kind of simian ally, and then, oh, we're on this planet, and look, there's a simian like the one I had with my Vault Hunter in Borderlands 3. Something like that. Do something new. But we didn't. We stayed safe there. Speaking on the classes, I do like the new 4 classes a good deal. And the new 4 classes are really just takes, of course, on the principal 4 classes from Borderlands 1, the same way it was in Borderlands 2. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with iterating a good, solid, successful design. There's nothing wrong with that. So I want to point that out first. I think Amara is a really good twist on the Sirens, because even though she has phase lock similar to Maya, it is different than Maya. And I'll get to why when I go through all the classes. The Beastmaster is more like Mordecai than any character. Borderlands 2 seemed to just like forget Beastmastery, which was weird. But I feel like he has too many choices, because it's like, yeah, you have like all of these different pets you can have. And there are pros and cons to each of them. You almost want the ability to like cycle through them mid-combat. And let's just face it, you know, the simian creature with the gun is, I mean, there is no other option. That's the option you should go with. I will say, I do find Mose to have really interesting talents, and like I said, I'll get to the talent stuff at the end of the classes. She's probably the least interesting character to me, outside of just her special. But having Flynn in the game, oh, that's cool. Zane Flint, the operative, he's a cool character. First off, awesome accent. Second, really interesting choice to like, stop using your grenades, because now we're going to talk about skills. The ability to edit skills in this game is really, that's what I'm talking about. We didn't scrap skills. We just iterated on a really good design in a really interesting way. And so I love that Zane has that choice. Like, do you want grenades or do you want 2 skills? Of course you want 2 skills. Well, then some of those skills are going to consume grenades to do neat stuff. And you might want that good grenade mod because your drone or your clone might be using the grenades that you would normally be using. Found that very interesting. I love the ability to turn a shield into a dome shield, into a healing shield, into a buff shield, into a taser shield. Like, so many cool options. And they do this with every character, where every character has 3 special abilities, except for Mose. 3 special abilities at least, and it's so fun to mix and match. You know, Mara's got such good trees, and her ability to edit, you know, add elements and edit her siren abilities, very compelling. The Beasts, the same thing. Mose, while my least favorite character out of the 4, I love that she has a giant mech, and that rather than like, oh, here's your second and third skill, skill 1 is a mech, no, all of your skill editing is about what weaponry and bonuses go on that mech. I did find that enjoyable in her skill tree, so there is that. I feel like I would be remiss without bringing up vehicles, which has always been a sore spot in the Borderlands series. Vehicles are junk here, the way they've been junk everywhere else. Driving them is awkward. You could say it's smoother here than it's been in previous Borderlands, but again, that feels like a given, and it still feels blah. And now, the last thing that I kind of want to touch on is, so two last pillars to this review. One being the villains and the story. While I found the writing here to be inferior to the Telltale and maybe even Borderlands 2 at times, the writing here is definitely better than Borderlands 1, where it was almost non-existent. The writing here is definitely better than some stretches of Borderlands 2 and most of the prequel. So, you know, the best word I could use to describe the story and the writing in Borderlands 3, inconsistent. And, you know, with a game that takes this long, you're bound to overthink as a writer myself. You're bound to think, overthink, and overanalyze pretty much every line you've written. Go back to the board and redo it. And at the same time, I know they replaced a bunch of the voice acting in this game. from the previous titles. So there is that, and the effects are definitely seen and felt. The villains for the story, though, I am less critical than other people with. They're super cringy at times, but so was Handsome Jack. You know, so was every piece of writing in Borderlands 1. Like, these two are not my favorite villains. That's for sure. But they're also not terrible. They're not a turnoff for me in the game. I do hate them. I do want to take them out. Not in the same way that I did Handsome Jack or, you know, Claptrap during the Claptrap Rebellion. You know, they're definitely not the top tier villains, but they're still good villains, and the story driving this is still a really interesting story. Like, I love the nuance of them being able to effectively unite the bandits across Pandora and stuff. That's interesting. Handsome Jack didn't control the bandits. He couldn't control the bandits. They're definitely doing something that's different. I also like the story here. I will say it was kind of like Easter egg, Easter egg, Easter egg. Because this story started showing us all the gun manufacturer CEOs. It started, you know, literally like every NPC, every character that's ever been teased, anything. You're seeing all of them. And while I think that's good for people that have been around since Borderlands 1, if this is your first Borderlands entry, that might fall flat for you. And that's a risk they took. I think it's a swing and a hit, but I don't think it's a home run for what I just said. If you're new to the series, could be a miss, right? Could be a miss. And the last thing I want to get to is the play modes, the grinding, and the guns. This is principle of the game, guys. This is a gear grind game. So yeah, if you're not into stat crunching and stuff, you play through the story with 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 characters. You pick it up once in a while when your friends come over and you play on the couch, great. But primarily, people are going to be picking this up. They're going to be pumping hour after hour after hour, grinding bosses, grinding chapters, trying to get specific legendary guns. And they're going to be playing the new play modes, too. I'm not going to get into the patches, editing the legendary guns, or, you know, like the buffs to the Malawan weapons and stuff. You know, that's all bound to change. People making videos about, like, oh, the best 5 legendaries, and then patch, you know, 1.82 comes out, and suddenly 3 of those legendaries are just nerfed to all heck. Like, I'm not going to get into that stuff, but I will tell you, I do find the gear grind in this game, because of the alternate fires, because of the better feeling weapons and the better feeling combat, I find the gear grind here both easier to do in terms of, like, I could do it for longer here without being sick of grinding, and I also just find it more fun. The drops here are definite. I don't want to say they're better than previous Borderlands, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, if the guns feel better, they have secondary fire. We've got, you know, more balanced gun types, where, you know, the damage type is actually balanced rather than certain types just being out of whack better than others. The grinding just feels better, and I think, I don't want to say that goes without saying, but I do want to say it's worth being said. And so, if I was to give Borderlands a rating, I mean, it is a solid 7.5, 8 out of 10. You know, it's really hard to capture that magic of Borderlands 1 for me, which was just such a new feeling and a new concept coming from, like, Diablo 2 and other gear grind games. It was such a neat concept to come into that as a shooter, a genre that I'd never really cared for that much. It's really hard to capture that magic. Even Borderlands 2 failed to capture that same Borderlands 1 magic for me, because it was so new as a concept at that point, and now it's kind of everywhere. I played Anthem, I played Destiny, I played Warframe. You know, there are other looter shooters, sure, in different, like, genres and styles and graphics and systems, but I still think Borderlands is the gold standard. You know, and for that, I'm gonna say that, my rating aside, because my rating is really irrelevant, I would just like to ask you, if you're watching this, 2 questions. 1, are you interested in Borderlands? 2, do you own a console that has Borderlands on it that isn't PC? Because if the answer to those is yes, then yes, you should be picking this up. at any price. $60, it's well worth that money. If you're playing this on PC, I have read page after page after page of the poor issues. I've talked to 2 friends who, yes, bought it on PC and ran into multiple issues on launch day. Since most of those issues have been corrected, but it still does have some slog, even though their PCs are really good rigs. So, buyer beware if you're getting it on PC. Maybe treat the Epic exclusive time window as the closed beta for the game. And then pick it up when it hits Steam. Hopefully by then everything's corrected. So yeah, I definitely think Borderlands is a worthwhile game. I very much loved my time with it. Point of fact, I got to play a couch co-op with someone who does not play shooters ever, has never played a Borderlands, and they as well found it very enjoyable. So take that for what you will. I adore the Borderlands series, so I admitted bias up front. It's your fault if you did not acknowledge that. Anyway, I've been Chris. This has been the Tiger's Den. You guys have been great. If you like any of the videos on our channel, be sure, guys, to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification icon. Every subscriber counts, every like counts, every view counts. And that's why I say you guys are great, because as we've been slow rolling some of the growth for this channel, there have been, just a couple people clicking on every now and again, a couple of videos going from, our first few videos hitting the tens of views to now we're, above 100 for quite a few videos. So that means a lot to Ben and I. When he's back from his vacation, he will begin his Magic the Gathering streams again. And yeah, more content coming. I'll close out with every Sunday I'll be live streaming. Every Tuesday and Saturday Ben will be live streaming. And the days in between we'll have little videos, reviews, snippets like this. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, remember, stick around. Welcome to the Tiger's Den.